What happens when people play with fire, especially when that fire is divine? Those who dare to tamper with the chosen ones are unknowingly courting disaster, like moths drawn to a deadly flame. These chosen individuals walk among us, seemingly ordinary, but to harm them is to provoke forces far beyond human understanding. Their divine connection is not a shield that can be seen, but a force that exacts merciless retribution. Ignorance is their enemy's greatest folly, for they remain blissfully unaware of the grave consequences that await them until it's too late. It started innocently enough. They didn't even see you for who you really were, just another obstacle in their path. Your ordinariness was disarming, making them feel invulnerable. They saw you as weak, unremarkable, easy targets. But what they couldn't see was the invisible shield of divine protection that made you untouchable. Throughout history, many have made this same mistake. Figures like David, who stood against Goliath, or Perseus, who faced monsters with divine favor. Ordinary on the outside, these individuals were anything but. Like those before them, your enemies were blinded by your apparent vulnerability. Your ordinariness was the perfect camouflage. You moved among them, going about your life, never drawing attention to yourself. You were the neighbor they barely noticed, the colleague who blended into the background, the stranger they passed on the street without a second thought. But beneath this mundane exterior lay a connection to something far greater, something that shielded you from the harm they sought to inflict. Every encounter reinforced their belief that you were inconsequential. They mistook your patience for passivity, your humility for weakness. They believed you were alone, unprotected, ripe for the taking. But what they couldn't see was the divine hand that guided you, the unseen force that watched over you, ready to strike down anyone who threatened your peace. As they plotted against you, they never considered that you might be anything other than what you seemed. Their arrogance blinded them to the truth, and in their ignorance, they set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead to their downfall. They underestimated you because they couldn't see the power that protected you, but that power was there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the moment to reveal itself. The first signs were subtle, plans that went awry, unexpected obstacles that appeared out of nowhere. They brushed them off, convinced that they were mere coincidences, but they were anything but. The divine shield that surrounded you was not just a passive force. It was active, intelligent, and it was beginning to push back against their efforts. Each misstep they took felt like a minor inconvenience at first, a small hiccup in their grand plans. But these were not coincidences. They were the first signs of divine intervention, the initial ripples of a much larger force that was slowly beginning to manifest. What they didn't realize was that each of these setbacks was a warning, a gentle nudge from a power they didn't believe in, urging them to stop before it was too late. They continued to push forward, oblivious to the mounting evidence that something beyond their understanding was at work. Every plan they devised, every trap they set, somehow unraveled in ways they couldn't explain. But they were too consumed by their arrogance to see the signs, too focused on their goal to recognize the divine forces aligning against them. And so, they pressed on, unaware that they were walking straight into their own demise. Their downfall began when they let their arrogance take root. They looked at you and saw only weakness. Jealousy, greed, or malice fueled their actions, clouding their judgment. Each move against you was like striking a match near gasoline, seemingly harmless but dangerously close to disaster. At first they reveled in their successes, mistaking your patience for defeat. Their ignorance bred confidence, making them reckless. They pushed harder, crossing lines they never would have crossed before. But each victory was actually a step closer to their own destruction. They mocked your restraint, convinced it was a sign of powerlessness. But your silence was not born of fear. It was the quiet confidence of those protected by forces they could not see. Every triumph they celebrated was a hollow one, bringing them closer to the edge. In their arrogance, they failed to recognize that you were not weak, but divinely protected. The firestorm they unwittingly ignited grew with every move they made, fueled by their hubris. They were too blinded by their perceived invincibility to see the danger until it was too late. Arrogance is a poison that seeps into the soul, distorting one's perception of reality. It convinces them that they are beyond the reach of consequences, that they are untouchable. They began to believe that nothing could stop them, not even the forces that had silently begun to align against them. They became more brazen, more daring, believing that you were nothing more than stepping stones on their path to greater power. But arrogance also blinds them to the truth. It makes them ignore the warning signs, the subtle hints that perhaps they are overreaching. Every time they succeeded in harming you, they fed the firestorm that would ultimately consume them. But in their arrogance, they saw these successes as proof of their superiority, never realizing that they were sowing the seeds of their own destruction. As their arrogance grew, so did their sense of entitlement. They believed they deserved every bit of success, every advantage they gained at your expense. The more they took from you, the more invincible they felt, utterly oblivious to the precariousness of their position. Each act of harm they inflicted on you wasn't just an act of malice. It was another step toward the brink of a chasm they had unwittingly created for themselves. Their arrogance also bred a sense of impatience. The initial success of their actions made them hungry for more, driving them to escalate their attacks against you. They couldn't see that their increasing aggression was a sign of their growing desperation, a futile attempt to force a victory that was never truly within their grasp. The more they pushed, the closer they came to the point of no return, and yet they were blind to the danger that lay ahead. Divine justice begins slowly, like a fire smoldering beneath the surface. They didn't notice at first the subtle shifts, the quiet changes signaling their downfall. They were too busy celebrating victories to see that the ground was crumbling beneath their feet. You knew, though. You felt the first sparks of karma but did not retaliate. You waited, patient, knowing divine retribution was inevitable. Meanwhile, the fire they had ignited grew, burning brighter and hotter, consuming the foundations of their life. They dismissed the initial setbacks as bad luck, convinced they could turn things around. But the more they pushed, the more the fire spread. Each day their confidence eroded as the reality of their situation became clear. The victories they once celebrated became hollow, mere illusions of success. You remained untouched, secure in your divine protection. You watched as their world began to unravel, knowing that justice moves at its own pace. They were left to struggle against the inevitable, their every effort only fueling the flames of their destruction. At first they couldn't comprehend what was happening. The setback seemed minor, insignificant in the grand scheme of their plans. A deal fell through, an ally became distant, but they shrugged it off, confident in their ability to recover. But as the failures piled up, as the obstacles became more frequent and more severe, they began to feel the first stirrings of doubt. Could it be that they had underestimated you? Divine justice works in ways that are often unseen, unfelt until it's too late. It doesn't strike with immediate force, but slowly, methodically, undermining the foundations of their success. As you watched from afar, secure in your divine protection, they continued to push forward, oblivious to the fact that every step they took was leading them closer to their own demise. As the fire of retribution smoldered beneath the surface, they began to notice something unsettling, a shift in their fortune that they couldn't quite explain. The luck they had relied on seemed to turn against them. Small, unexpected failures began to snowball into larger, more catastrophic events. What once felt like minor obstacles now seemed like insurmountable barriers, and the confidence that had once driven them forward began to erode, leaving behind a gnawing sense of dread. The more they tried to regain control, the more everything slipped through their fingers. The resources they had once commanded with ease became scarce. Their allies grew distant, and their influence waned. They were too focused on their immediate struggles to see the bigger picture, to understand that the divine forces they had challenged were now actively working against them. The slow burn of divine justice was in motion, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. And then it happened, the moment when divine retribution finally struck, swift and brutal. One moment they stood tall, confident in their power. The next, everything they had built was in flames. The firestorm they had ignited with their arrogance now consumed everything, leaving nothing but destruction. The devastation was absolute. There was no time to react, no chance to escape. The forces they had mocked now turned against them with a vengeance. Everything they valued, their power, their influence, was reduced to ashes before their eyes. As the flames consumed their world, they realized the truth. This was no ordinary fire. It was divine judgment, the inevitable consequence of their actions. The power they once wielded was nothing in the face of this retribution, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. The firestorm revealed their true weakness, stripping away the arrogance that had blinded them. They were left standing amidst the ruins, understanding at last that they were nothing in the face of divine power. You, untouched by the flames, had survived their malice, while they were consumed by the very fire they had ignited. In that moment of destruction, there was a clarity that they had never experienced before. The illusion of control of power was shattered. They had believed themselves to be the masters of their own fate, but now they saw the truth. They were merely players in a game far larger than themselves. The divine forces they had disregarded, the power they had mocked, now showed them the folly of their arrogance. The firestorm didn't just consume their world, it consumed them. Everything they had believed about themselves, everything they had fought for, was reduced to nothing. The flames left them bare, exposed to the raw reality that they had been nothing more than pawns in a cosmic struggle. You, whom they had sought to destroy, now stood as a testament to the power of the divine, while they were left with nothing but the ashes of their hubris. As they stood in the midst of the destruction, they finally understood the full scope of their downfall. The firestorm that had consumed their lives was not an accident, not a mere twist of fate. It was the inevitable result of their own actions, a direct consequence of the arrogance and hubris that had driven them to challenge forces far beyond their comprehension. The devastation was total, and as the smoke cleared, they were left with nothing but the bitter taste of regret and the knowledge that they had brought this upon themselves. In their last moments, as the flames closed in around them, they were forced to confront the reality they had long denied. The power they had sought to wield was never truly theirs. It was an illusion, a fragile construct that crumbled in the face of divine retribution. They had thought themselves invincible, but now they knew the truth. No one is beyond the reach of divine justice. As the fire consumed all they had built, they realized too late that they had been their own worst enemy, architects of their own destruction. When the flames died down, all that remained were ashes and regret. They stood alone in the ruins, surrounded by the remnants of their former life, their former power. They had been so sure of themselves, so convinced that they could challenge you and emerge unscathed. But now, as they sifted through the ashes, they realized how wrong they had been. Regret washed over them like a tidal wave. The faces of those they had wronged haunted them. Your face, the chosen ones who had endured their malice. You hadn't been ordinary, and neither was your protection. The divine shield that surrounded you was impenetrable, and their attempts to breach it had only led to their own destruction. Their life, once filled with power and influence, was now reduced to nothing. The empire they had built, the reputation they had cultivated, all of it lay in ruins, consumed by the fire they had ignited. They replayed every decision, every action, desperately searching for the moment where it all went wrong. But the truth was that their downfall had been inevitable from the start. Regret consumed them, a slow-burning fire that ate away at their soul. You, once their enemy, were now a symbol of everything they had lost. The worst part was the knowledge that it could have been different if only they had recognized the signs. But now, it was too late. The firestorm had come and gone, leaving nothing but ashes in its wake. The weight of their regret grew heavier with each passing day. They could see now what they had been blind to before, the signs, the warnings, the subtle shifts that had signaled their impending doom. But in their arrogance, they had ignored them, convinced that they were invincible, and now they were paying the price. Regret is a cruel companion, reminding them constantly of what they had and what they lost. It whispers in their ear, pointing out the moments when they could have turned back, the choices they could have made differently. But it offers no comfort, no relief. The ashes of their former life are a stark reminder of their failure, and as they stand amidst the ruins, they know that this is their new reality, one shaped by regret and the knowledge that they brought this upon themselves. In the quiet moments, when the world is still, they are haunted by the echoes of their past decisions. Each memory is a sharp reminder of the opportunities they missed to change their course, the countless times they could have chosen a different path. But these moments are now ghosts, lingering in the ruins of what once was, serving as constant, painful reminders of the life they destroyed with their own hands. Their regret is not just a personal torment, but a public one. Those who once feared and revered them now look upon them with pity, a stark contrast to the power they once held. The world sees them for what they truly are, fallen, broken, and defeated. Their legacy, once built on arrogance and cruelty, is now a cautionary tale, a reminder to all who witness their downfall that no one is immune to the consequences of their actions. They are left to grapple with the reality that they are no longer the feared rulers they once were, but mere shadows of their former selves, consumed by regret and the knowledge that they have lost everything. As they wallowed in regret, you emerged from the flames unscathed. You had endured their attacks, weathered the storm of their malice, and now stood stronger than ever, vindicated by the divine protection that had shielded you all along. The destruction that had consumed them left you untouched, your faith only strengthened by the ordeal. The lesson was clear. Those under divine protection are not to be trifled with. The power that shields you is far greater than any earthly force, and those who seek to harm you do so at their own peril. They had been so sure of their superiority, yet here they were, brought low by forces they had dismissed as superstition. You, once their target, now stood as a testament to the futility of challenging the divine. Your renewed strength and unshakable faith were proof of a power they could never comprehend. As they watched you emerge victorious, they understood that their downfall had been inevitable. They had played with fire, and they had been burned. The divine protection that had shielded you had destroyed them. Your victory was not just a personal triumph, but a cosmic one, a reaffirmation of your place in the world. And they, once so confident in their power, were left with nothing but the bitter taste of defeat and the knowledge that they had been undone by a power far greater than themselves. As you emerged from the flames, you became a symbol of a truth they had failed to grasp. Divine protection is absolute. It doesn't waver. It doesn't fail. No matter how hard they fought, how much they schemed, the forces that protected you remained steadfast. You had not just survived, you had thrived. Your faith in the divine now unbreakable, your purpose now clear. And they, the ones who had sought to destroy you, were left in ruins. The power that had once fueled their arrogance was now gone, replaced by a deep, bitter understanding of the forces they had dared to challenge. You had emerged victorious, not because you were stronger, but because you were protected by something far greater. Their defeat was inevitable, their downfall preordained by the very forces they had underestimated. Your vindication was not just a testament to your faith, but a demonstration of the futility of opposing the divine. They had believed themselves capable of breaking you, of bending your will to theirs. But now, as they watched you stand stronger than before, they understood that their efforts were in vain. The divine protection that shielded you was impenetrable, and their attempts to challenge it only ensured their own destruction. In the end, you were not just vindicated, you were elevated, your connection to the divine solidified by the trials they unwittingly imposed upon you. Your triumph was also a lesson to the world. Those who witnessed your rise from the ashes saw the undeniable power of the divine forces that protected you. They understood that you were no ordinary person, but someone chosen, someone who could not be broken by earthly malice. Your enemy's downfall became a stark warning to others who might consider challenging you in the future. The world now knew that to oppose you was to invite destruction, and your name became synonymous with strength, resilience, and divine favor. As they looked upon the wreckage of those who had tried to harm you, It became clear that you were not just victorious, you were invincible. And so, here they stand, amidst the ruins of their own making, a living testament to the dangers of ignoring the divine. To harm the chosen ones is to invite retribution that is as inevitable as it is devastating. They didn't see it coming, but the signs were always there, waiting for them to recognize them. But now it's too late for them. Their story is one of arrogance, ignorance, and regret, a cautionary tale for those who would follow in their footsteps. Remember this. When they played with fire, especially when that fire was divine, they were burned. You, the chosen ones, are protected by a force beyond their understanding, a force that does not forgive and does not forget. They learned this the hard way, and their downfall serves as a warning to all: respect the divine or face the consequences.